Hello, this is Duncan, your host for episode 1 of Interview with a Schizophrenic, and I'm very happy to say that I've got Frank from New York with me. Hello,
Hello.
Frank. Hi. So, we're both schizophrenics, and we're going to talk about schizophrenia and how it affects Frank, how his experiences, his symptoms, and see how he goes. So, Frank, can you first tell me, if we go back to 2011 when you were diagnosed, what happened then? How were you diagnosed? What were you experiencing? Um,
Well, actually, I was diagnosed in 2011, but I first started experiencing symptoms, paranoia symptoms, in 2008. And actually,
yeah,
I ended up quitting my job. I worked for a bank at that point.
yeah,
Um, and I started getting these ideas that the people that I worked with were saying these horrible things about me and talking behind my back, um, and it led me to quit the bank. But I didn't really understand what was going on until much later. I ended up. I guess this is probably a common thing with schizophrenics, but I ended up becoming or getting into drugs to kind of deal with it, which
okay,
really it just made everything worse, obviously.
yeah.
But then they kind of fed each other. And in 2011, I was diagnosed actually because I was in some legal trouble, and the courts asked that I had some kind of a mental health examination, and so that's when I was diagnosed.
So were you? So you had an examination with a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
and how did the psychiatrist diagnose you? Did they you had like an assessment, or how did it go?
Yeah, it was definitely. They asked me a ton of questions, and I don't know. Actually, that was probably the first time that I was ever totally honest with a
Yeah,
doctor as
yeah,
well. I think that, and this might be, something you have experience with also, but kind of hiding, your true
yeah,
symptoms from people just
yeah.
because, I mean,
It
um,
can be quite. I think at the start, like for me, it goes against everything that we were conditioned to be as people, because
exactly.
it sounds crazy, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
you don't want to say it, and it's so hard. But now I guess it seems easy, but back then it was so hard. Yeah. So carry on. So tell me tell me about the symptoms. What were you experiencing mentally?
Okay. Well, I was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, so
Yeah.
paranoia was a big part of what I experienced, or experience, I guess. I also had auditory, what they called auditory hallucinations. I've since
Okay.
come to understand it differently in my years of experience. But I've also seen things, kind of everything. I've also um, I don't know how exactly to explain it, other than experience coincidences where I would see two things being connected that
Yes.
normally wouldn't be, but I would see it all the time. Like,
Synchronicities.
yes, synchronicity, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, that was a big thing for me as well. And actually,
Yeah.
one of the
That's very scary, isn't it? It can
it
be.
is, and I think for a long time I tried to believe that this was just my malfunctioning brain creating all
Yeah.
of this. But actually, the synchronicity part of it made it impossible for me to believe that. And I've since started seeking out my own spiritual journey, and I think that where I
So,
am
so
now. I'm sorry.
yeah, so obviously you were going through a tough time there. You were working in 2008. You're doing a good job. Then the mental symptoms started with you, and then you got diagnosed with schizophrenia. You had the legal problems, so then your whole life changed, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
what
I mean,
that must have. Yeah,
oh,
go on,
oh,
tell me about that.
well, I mean, I spent a lot of time, pretty much the entirety of my 20s, for the most part alone. I didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And it hasn't actually only been, but in the past like 3 to 4 years, that I've really started to understand what I've been experiencing. And I've been able to move forward and start building my life up again in a
Okay.
healthy way.
Okay. Cool. So you told me we've already spoken before, and you told me that you're a healer and you're into spirituality. So why didn't you tell me something about that? What are your spiritual beliefs, and how does it relate to your occupation as a healer?
Totally. Well, I guess for a long time, I believed that what I was experiencing wasn't coming just from my diseased mind, but that it was coming from elsewhere. And
It's not a
unfortunately,
diseased mind, man. I
I'm
don't
sorry.
think it's not a diseased mind. It's like a, it's not. Don't. I know. Carry on. Carry
That,
on. Carry on.
the
Sorry.
reason why I say it that way is because that's kind of what I've always been told by Western medicine.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
you're not working properly. You need medication to work properly, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I tried to be on board with that, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. After 10 years of what I've experienced, there's no way that I could allow myself to believe that it was me not working properly. And so that's when I started seeking answers elsewhere, and I started developing my spirituality and understanding it. And um, now as a healer, I'm level 2 Reiki, but I also do other things as well. I'm coming to understand how the universe works, how everything is energy, and how there's much more out there than we really talk about at this point in human evolution. And so, um, I think that as I've come to understand the universe better, it's helped me to find reasons for what I'm experiencing and what's coming from, and that's helped me to deal with the stuff that I'm experiencing and to find healthy ways of dealing with those things that isn't necessarily just medication. So.
Yes. Okay, Frank. I want to ask you: are you experiencing any psychosis symptoms at the moment in your life?
Um, that's a tricky question because right now I'm not currently on any medication,
Yep.
and for the most part, my days are fairly positive. I have a
Yeah.
few bad days here and there, but I've learned really what psychosis is, and I think from a Western medical standpoint, yeah, I probably do experience psychosis, but from my newfound perspective, I see it more as being able to communicate like with my spirit guides or angels or.
Something. I also believe in spirit guides,
Hmm,
um, and yeah, I'm also a student of spirituality as well,
cool.
and it is quite, it's a common theme for schizophrenics to have to go searching for these answers in religion and in spirit. Um, and I think
Definitely.
it's fantastic that we um, both have this desire to know more. So yeah, I mean, personally, I've got my own spiritual view of schizophrenia. Do you have your own spiritual view as well?
Hmm.
I mean, what does it? I mean, I suppose for me, I sort of believe that the schizophrenic is attuned to spiritual phenomena. So, like synchronicities, I believe that is because we're all connected in some way as
I,
spirit.
I also believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
I think like as you're saying, schizophrenics are just more sensitive to what is out there in the universe,
Yeah.
um, versus other people who may not be fully aware of everything that's going on around them.
So how do you your life now, um how is it how is it tough coping as a schizophrenic in New York? um do you have to do things to make sure that you don't make yourself vulnerable, you don't put yourself into a situation where you can be uncomfortable? I mean, tell me about that.
Well, I'm from Colorado originally, and actually,
Yeah.
4 years ago, I moved here to New York by myself.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I was still using drugs, and I was still very much confused by everything that was going on around me. And actually,
Yeah.
being here by myself in New York allowed me the opportunity to seek out my own answers. I think up until then, when I lived in Colorado, where a lot of my family is, I was seeking out answers that were the answers they wanted me to seek out. They were the ones that were like, "Oh, you got to talk to a therapist, you got to take your medication, you got to do all this stuff," and it
Mm.
kind of stopped me from seeking out my own answers. And so, actually moving here and being completely by myself and thousands of miles away from anyone that I really knew allowed me to start seeking out my own answers, and that's actually been probably the most helpful thing to me.
So tell me, in New York, are you part of a community, mental health community? Is there like a drop-in center? Do you mix with other mental health sufferers in New York?
I definitely have. There's an office that I used to go to a lot, not so much anymore. But I also, I think I'm more connected to a group of recovering addicts that I found
Okay.
here um,
Okay.
through a group called Smart Recovery. So,
Do you
um,
want to talk about the drugs and how it relates to your mental health? Was that must have been quite a struggle in your life? Um,
yeah, it has definitely created the most suffering that I've ever
okay.
experienced. I think that they kind of feed each other as I'm experiencing these things as a schizophrenic and not really knowing how to deal with it, and finding, I guess, some level of comfort in drugs, but then ultimately also just fueling things and making things worse and more negative. It's been pretty crazy. I
Okay.
think, though, that as I've entered into my recovery from my addiction problems, what I've learned in recovery has really helped me to understand my situation, understand who I am, and it's also led to the development of my spiritual self and how I relate to the rest of the universe. And I think it's ultimately been worth it, I guess, everything
I
that I've
mean,
experienced.
there are some people like there's some people like Graham Hancock who talks about how psychedelic drugs are actually a part of our evolution as a history of the human species,
Mm,
um, and that things like ayahuasca is actually helps us connect with spirit, or even if you're taking marijuana, it can be a spiritual experience. Even smoking, in a way, is a spirit. It has its roots in spirituality. If you look at the Native Americans, I
definitely.
mean, there
Um,
is that whole ethos about drugs and spirituality, um, and it kind of relates to schizophrenia as well, because really schizophrenics are attuned to the spiritual phenomenon, and also that and also there is that link to shamanism in the past as well.
Definitely. And actually, on my website, I'm working on a blog post about drugs right now and
Yeah.
spirituality, and how what I've come to see is that certain drugs like marijuana, like ayahuasca, like peyote, they have a tendency to raise your vibration to
Yeah.
connect you more to the higher spiritual realms. Whereas drugs like heroin and methamphetamine will actually
Mm,
lower your vibration significantly, which will connect you to much lower spiritual realms where negative energy thrives and
mm,
exists. Demonic energy, if you will, if you want to call it that. Um, and that's actually been something that I've come to understand as a schizophrenic and a drug addict, and who is now in recovery from both. So,
how do you see your future as, with schizophrenia? I mean, are you hopeful for the future? I mean, because
yeah, definitely. I no longer see schizophrenia as a curse, as something that
yeah,
is detrimental to my health. I've learned what it is, at least as far as my experience goes, and I've learned how to
yeah,
deal with it and how to use it to my advantage. And so now
yeah,
I am very much grateful that it's something that I experience because it helps me to be a better healer. It helps
mm,
me to help other people, and that's really what I'm dedicating my life to, is helping others.
yeah. I think they, I think people who do go through a lot of, I guess, mental, emotional pain do seek to help others after that. It's kind of like it's that journey, I think, and it's not a question as simple as saying, oh yeah, anybody can look after people. Because a lot of people don't. A lot of people do not look after people, and there's a lot of people who are lonely and suffering.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean I think that's great. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
I think my experiences have shown me how I can help people. I guess I feel like everything that I've gone through has kind of been almost a training program of sorts, so that I can understand the
yeah,
universe in the way that I understand it now.
yeah.
And
That
then
that's I think of the same thing. I think the same thing sometimes.
yeah, yeah. And I feel like, I've gone through all of this. Now I know everything that I know. I have all this knowledge. What am I going to do with it? Well, because we're all connected, that
Yeah.
means that I need to be helping whoever I can, so that in the end,
Hello.
it will also help me, because we're all one. So
I get the sense you don't want to miss out on things. You want to be in the middle of things, right? I mean, what was the decision to move to New York?
that's definitely part of it. I think I had visited New York twice before I moved here and kind of fell in love with it. And um, things weren't really going well for me in Colorado.
Yeah,
I I think I moved here for a bunch of different reasons, but ultimately, I think this is where I'm supposed to be.
yeah,
The city is definitely more my speed. I'm definitely a go person, and this city is nothing but going. So
yeah,
I think that I fit that. Plus, there's always something around the corner that's weird
yeah,
and interesting, and
yeah,
I think to being here affords me the opportunity to meet and experience people from all over the world. I mean, you know,
yeah,
there's so many different cultures that clash here, and there's so many
yeah.
different people with different beliefs. It's wonderful, actually.
Okay, so what I mean in terms of schizophrenia, how do you? I mean, you've got a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. How do you see yourself? How's your relationships with your family and your friends? Did that change? Did your friends change? Did your family treat you differently? I
Um,
mean, because this is
yeah,
something that
yeah. I think my family, they they don't understand the mental health part of it, and when things were at their worst, and um, things were just crazy and very negative, they didn't understand it, and I didn't know how to be around them. So I really kind of removed myself from my family experience, from all of my friends. And like I said before, I think I spent pretty much 10 years just kind of on my own by myself, trying to
okay,
understand this. And um, It's been great though, because in the past, what, 2, 3 years, as I have gotten better and um, have come to understand things in a different way, my I've been able to reconnect with my family, and it's
Okay.
almost like everything's normal again. It's pretty cool.
Okay, good man. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what would how would you? I mean, we were talking about earlier. Schizophrenia has quite a bad image. I mean, what? How do you feel we can change that? You know, what do you want to tell people listening to this? What do you? Hello?
Oh, I lost you again.
I lost Frank
Oh,
again.
there we go.
Hello? Yeah, yeah. Okay, Frank. What do you want to? You know, because like it was like, what do you want to tell people listening to this? What schizophrenics are really like from your experience? What are you really like? Are you, you know, what? How,
Yeah.
what
Um,
would you how what do you want to tell someone to understand how you feel? You know?
Well, I can say, I think that pop culture has a funny way of using mental health, specifically schizophrenia and other things like that, as kind of this way of, explaining violent and horrible people in pop culture, in the movies and things like that. And honestly, I have yet to meet a schizophrenic person who is violent or
Yeah.
who is trying to destroy things. I think most schizophrenics, at least the ones that I've encountered in my life, have all just been people who are good people, who don't want to hurt anyone else, and who
Yeah.
are really just experiencing things that are intense and confusing, and they just want answers. They want relief from their
Yeah.
symptoms.
Are you on medication at the moment?
I
You're
used
not on.
to be.
You said,
I don't need to take them anymore. I've been able to wean myself off of them.
so
So
you were on antipsychotics before, right?
yeah, I've probably been on most typical and atypical antipsychotics at one point or another for the past 10 years, trying different things, seeing if things work, if they don't. Um, and really, none of them ever really improved my situation. It's only been the development of my spirituality that's improved my situation and helped me to
But
recover.
what? But these drugs are quite powerful. I mean, what was your experience? Did you experience side effects? Um, you
Yeah,
know, did you?
I think most of the time, the uh, the the benefits did not outweigh the negative side effects from them. I
Yeah,
took one drug that made me feel too big for my body. I felt like I was going to
yeah,
explode constantly, like I was just going to explode out of my body. I
right,
don't know, and they all
yeah,
made me very tired. They
yeah,
made me gain weight. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know that in some cases the medication is helpful for some people, and
Mm.
um, I think just in my specific personal experience, it's been the development of my spirituality that has really changed everything for me.
You talk about spirituality, and I think that's a passion. I think that's a passion for you, and you know, we can talk about this, and it's also a great passion for me as well.
Mm.
Um, you know, I've, I mean, for me, it was when my mum passed away and I was looking for answers and I read through spirituality and it also gave me an understanding of schizophrenia as well. And I think it's given you an understanding of schizophrenia as well, the spiritual aspect. And it's interesting we both came to that same conclusion, that in a way, spirituality kind of explains a lot of the mental phenomenon that you experience as a schizophrenic. Um,
Definitely.
and but I mean, it's also it's all yeah, and it's kind of like an other niche. It's a niche kind of almost a taboo topic in modern life, isn't it?
It
Um,
is, and I think, I mean, as far as I understand it, I think we're kind of moving into a phase in human evolution where I think it's going to become much more prevalent. I think we're all going to start to understand our spirituality and our place in the universe in the years to come.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that really schizophrenia is rooted in our spirituality and our
Mm,
connection to the rest of the universe. And I
mm,
think the more that we can understand the universe that surrounds us, and the more that we can understand how we fit into all of that,
mm,
it can help us to understand symptoms like auditory and visual hallucinations and different things, synchronicity that we notice. I think all of that can be explained just by understanding the universe better.
yeah. Do you want to talk about any of the symptoms that you've experienced? Is that something you want to talk about?
Sure.
Because
I guess I've come to understand my auditory hallucinations as
yeah,
really a telepathic communication between
yeah,
myself and other conscious entities out there, my spirit
yeah,
guides. And
mhm,
I think that, you know, I've had an array of experiences as far as those go, from being harassed and put
yeah,
down and having these overwhelmingly negative experiences to having these communications tell me, you know, oh, it doesn't say it's going to rain today, but you might want to bring an umbrella just in case because it turns out it did rain, you know? So they've been positive, they've been negative, and as I've understood where these are coming from, I've understood the difference between them, and I've been able to take myself away from the negative experiences and allow myself to keep experiencing the positive ones.
yeah. I mean, it can also be quite scary, isn't it? Did you have some paranoid delusions as well?
Oh
Which
yeah, I've had paranoid delusions that have been very intense,
yeah,
and they've caused a great deal of damage in the past, to
yeah.
myself, to so many things. But like I said,
Because I mean,
oh yeah.
yeah. So carry on, carry on, carry on.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I've come to understand where those things originated from, and I've been able to learn how to block that from my experience and to protect
Yeah,
myself from that sort of thing. Because the universe is full of positive and negative energy. And so I think,
yeah,
learning that certain things come from certain places, you can protect yourself from those things and make your experience more positive. I know we're almost out of time.
yeah. We're just about out of time. It was fantastic to speak to you, Frank.
Yeah, this is
Uh,
wonderful.